When I was in graduate school, working on my dissertation, I had to find several articles about Harry Harlow and his work with rhesus monkeys. And I actually found one in a book, an edited volume of chapters, all somehow focusing on child development. And in that same book, in a very different chapter, I found a photo that looks a lot like this one. I didn't have much time to process it then, but it really struck me, as sometimes photos do. I was looking at myself. I was born without arms. But in a way, this wasn't me at all. I'm not a helpless toddler. I'm not naked. I do things. I'm dynamic. I'm in color. So about 5 years ago, I started very casually researching how people with disabilities are portrayed in photography. And it turns out that there are several distinct genres, each containing its own message. So a couple examples. A medical model, as is seen here, and here are some other examples. A very different kind of genre is the modern athlete, and you can easily find images like this doing a simple Google search. A kind of diverse genre is one that involves sales or marketing, and I really like these vintage images by James Gillingham, who designed and tried to sell artificial limbs. Now, the models in these 9 or 10 photos, the people in these 9 or 10 photos, to me, they're largely the same. They all have disabilities, almost all are amputees, and all of them are middle-aged or younger. What varies so much between the photos is the context and all the little things that go into them. The sharpness of the image, the color contrast, the clothes they wear, the props, the angle of the camera. That's what tells us how we're supposed to feel about the image. On the left, maybe I feel a little sorry for her, or I worry about her future. On the right, I'm not worried about her at all. The decision to the photographer and the genre of the photo has a lot to say about how we're supposed to feel. Now, I've had a photography hobby of my own for many years now, and I've learned a bit about the little things, the contextual factors that go into a good photo. There's a small, fine line between success and I have to try again. And I'll just use light as a simple example. To me, these are both images of a spider web. The one on the left worked. The sun was my friend. 2 minutes later, I think less than 2 minutes later, I took the image on the right, but the sun was a little bit closer to setting. I lost my light and the camera, and I couldn't find the spider web. Sometimes I try to manipulate where the light goes using a mirror. And sometimes I'm pretty happy with what I get. Sometimes, like on the right, it's just simply not successful. A small, fine line between success and I have to try again. I've been fortunate to get some of my photos into art galleries across the country. And here's what's really cool about the process. It's all online. No assumptions can be made about me based on my appearance. No assumptions based on appearance. I actually bet many of you crave that from time to time as well. My images have to stand on their own. The reviewers do not know that I use the camera with my feet. So I'm not punished for having a disability, and I'm not getting extra credit for it either. Now, I'm gonna make a big transition here, and I want to ask you all a question, an unfair question. Based on our 3.5 minutes together and your assumptions, what do you think I might be like? I want you to try to think of 3 adjectives that you think could accurately describe me. And I know this is terribly unfair. Just do your best. 3 adjectives. What's this guy like? Okay, got them in your head? Let me see if I can guess any. How many of you had one of these words on your list? How many of you had, well, not many. How many of you had 2? Good crowd. The truth is, I get these words all the time, at least once a week, and almost always from people that I've just met. And for reasons that I don't fully understand, it kind of bothers me. And so this past summer, I did something very indulgent. I wanted to learn more about this, so I asked 10 of my closest friends the same question. What am I like? Please give me 3 adjectives. And here's what they came up with. Believe me, I know I am not perfect. I got things to work on. I'm late to almost everything. I struggle with names sometimes, and there's a list that could go on and on and on. I'm working on it, I promise. But my friends, as friends are, were very sweet. And they made this list, and there are some themes that we see. Apparently, I'm kind and generous. I am intelligent in certain ways. And other adjectives kind of stand out on their own. Courageous does appear, but just once. 1 person out of 10. 1 adjective out of 30. So a simple message that I take from this is that as people get closer and closer to me, they see my disability as less and less prominent. I have to admit, as you already know, I'm not a big fan of this list. And you know what it is? It's story problems. Remember story problems back in high school? Like train A leaves Denver at 8 a.m. heading south, and train B, oh, you know, you've been there. One thing I remember is letter D cannot be answered from the information given. And that's what I'm saying here. It cannot be stated when one first meets me whether I am determined or courageous or whatever. It takes days or weeks or longer to come to that kind of conclusion. Another problem I kind of have with this list is that these words tend to get at stable internal traits. And in doing so, they ignore contextual variables. And I'll use courage as a very simple, easy example. I am courageous in some ways. I like spiders. I would kiss a spider for you if you really wanted me to. I'm good on planes. I'm one of the bravest people you'll meet on a flight, even if it's bumpy. Doctor's offices? No. Needles? No. Ask any nurse in Blacksburg. They'll be like, oh, he's a train wreck. He's a total coward. Parties, social gatherings, I'm okay. I might go. But if I go, I'll probably spend a little bit more time than usual in the bathroom, courageously hiding. A way of thinking about this is what's called the fundamental attribution error. And this was in 1977, Lee Ross and Edward Jones started writing about this. The idea that when explaining a given outcome for another person, we tend to overemphasize internal factors. And it's a natural bias, and I don't think we need to beat ourselves up about it, but I argue that we should try to recognize and try to minimize how often we take cognitive shortcuts when explaining another person. So a very simple example is cutting in line. So you're at the airport, you're at the screening line, and someone goes to the front of the line. And your initial reaction is probably something like, that jerk, right? And all the things that go into that, insensitive, uncaring, disorganized, and all this. But if it's you who cut in line, and maybe some of us have once, we know all the background variables. You know, I was doing okay, and then my dog ate a bag of sugar, and he got sick, and I had to take him to the vet, and there was a detour, and if I don't make this flight, my boss is going to kill me, so I hate doing this. I'm going to cut in line. So you know all the contextual variables, all the circumstances. I and the people who know me really well know the circumstances surrounding my disability. My wonderfully supportive family and friends and colleagues in the Department of Psychology. The incredible technology that helps me do things on my own, and having the money to pay for it. So I can say that I'm successful in some measurable ways, but without these circumstances, and probably more than a little luck, I don't know. There's a small fine line between success and have to try again. Now, I know that in some ways the premise of my talk is complaining about getting compliments, and I don't feel great about that. I'm complaining about strangers coming up to me and saying that I'm courageous or they admire me, and I don't feel great. It feels weird. And to be honest, when it happens, I don't mind it. I'm not offended. I actually think it's quite sweet. But I still do have some problems with it, even if it's meant to be complimentary. And I should say, sometimes it's not. Some people with disabilities have to endure ridicule. Many of us with disabilities have to endure pity. Twice in the last 6 months, someone I don't know has tried to buy my lunch. And it wasn't like, hey, let me buy you some lunch. No, it was pity. It was, hey, here's $20, take it. Please take it. And that's a bitter pill to swallow. But even setting that aside, even when it is meant to be complimentary, and almost always it is, I still have a little bit of a problem with it because it creates, I think, an unnatural difference between the speaker and the recipient. And that, to me, sets up a barrier to intimacy, to conversation, to understanding. How can you truly come to understand another person if you start with a belief and assumption that he or she is somehow lesser than or better than you? Something that probably won't surprise you. I don't want to feel different from everybody else. I don't want to feel special. And honestly, more importantly, much more importantly, I'm simply not. But once again, we're back to assumptions. I think each of us has some basic worldview or belief about whether people are fundamentally the same or fundamentally different. I choose to believe we are fundamentally the same. It's an assumption that I actually honestly think is true, and it helps me get along with the other people on this planet. I think the Dalai Lama states it beautifully. Whether one is rich or poor, educated or illiterate, religious or non-believing, man, woman, black, white, or brown, we are all the same. Physically, emotionally, mentally, we are all equal. We all share basic needs for food, shelter, safety, and love. We all aspire to happiness. I hope these words resonate with you. I hope this quote rings true to you. And if it does, I hope you can think of it not as some abstract perspective to think about and quickly forget, but an idea to apply to daily life. And I hope it's something that we can apply to those of us with disabilities as well. So I'll leave you with a scenario. Let's say you come upon a person with a disability alone. And many questions will likely pop into your head. I know this is an intimidating circumstance, and people think, can I look at this person? Should I say something? What should I say? Is she going to need any help? And you don't know anything about her. All you have are your assumptions. But I would say if you believe in this quote, you have to believe that this person wants many of the same things in life that you do. If you believe in this quote, you have to assume that at this very moment she is entirely in control of her situation. If you believe in this quote, you have to believe that she might like a simple, friendly hello, just like you would. If you believe in this quote, I think you have to believe and assume that people with disabilities like me are capable, just like you, and flawed, just like you, contented, just like you. I think you have to believe that those of us with disabilities are just like you. Thank you very much.